when I founded Transcend a while back, we wanted to really look at what are the leadership practices that make the difference between success and failure in leading big change. Because a lot of this field can be very hocus pocus, very, very soft and fluffy. And we wanted a more scientific or rigorous way to analyze what makes the difference. So your business model is radically changing, and therefore how you bring in the change should really try and simulate or model that. So the last thing you'd want to do right now, if your business model is going to be more networked, is to dictate the change. You'd see the irony in actually bringing a top-down change alone when you're trying to work a business model that's much more networked. The first thing, I think, is to learn to move from what I call a vertical world of the hierarchy to a lateral world of learning how to work in networks rather than working through a chain of command. The second thing, which I think, Peter, you spoke about a lot last night, is to move from a world where, what I call it's like an inside-out world, the supplier just pushes things out, to a world that is more about outside in. So how can we really learn and listen to the outside world? I always look in a big change effort to who are the beneficiaries, who are going to benefit from this change. And I don't always hear the beneficiaries in the conversation. So who are the ultimate target here for the change? And do we bring them out of the corporate story and use them in every meeting? I don't often hear the beneficiaries named. So outside in, not just inside out. And the third thing I think I'd say is to learn to lead in a world of partial solutions. Can it be good enough rather than perfect? Masterful change does not mean democracy. And some people are starting to apologize to me, saying, oh, sorry, Deborah, I've got to go back to being directive. Well, what do you mean? I've now got to decide what to do. That's fine. That's also masterful. But the fact is you've actually tested and engaged the organization and to try and actually build skills around you. And for me, it's not just about the doing. It's also about the being. What I've really learnt myself in leading big change, not just advising about it, is your mood is everything. That's probably the most unscientific thing, Roger, you're smiling now, I'm going to say this morning. And I found in the BBC that my mood made all the difference as to whether or not I could inspire people, take them with me, tackle the big things, have the difficult conversations. If I had a bad night's sleep, or I was just feeling a bit, not quite good, or I was irritable, or I was worried about the next meeting I was going into, or I was worrying about the meeting I had last week, my mood set the whole culture. The team started, is Deborah okay? Or what's going on? And then they would tell other people. So, look after yourselves through this. Your mood and how you feel internally is really going to affect how people trust you as an authentic leader. And then finally, how as a leader do you get through all of this? And I'm saying here it's about being more mindful or more aware as a leader about what you do. It's not about trying harder. Earlier in my career, I used to try and actually just try a bit hard. If I just stayed in the office 2 more hours, I might, help get through this change. But often in change, we just get busy. We just put more and more things on our plate rather than actually leading differently. So if RWE have got to reinvent themselves, you've got to reinvent yourself as a leader. And what does that actually look like? One of the biggest things we found was that leaders who tried to do it all, who were heroic, who tried to solve everything for everybody, that led to failure. We've done the fight and the aggression, we've done the flight and the over-intellectualizing, we've done the freeze, which is, oh my God, I'll just get busy with lots of little things and avoid the big tough things. Your task as leaders is to help people face into the change. You've got to face into it yourself, and you have to help your people face into it. Now let's move on to the murky subject of emotions. And gosh, that's a very huge subject to actually deal with. But I've called it here, Ignore the Human Dynamics at Your Peril. thing I'll say about the fight, flight, freeze is it's very normal. So if you feel it in yourself, if you see it in your staff, do not panic. This is exactly what is meant to happen, which is the good news. So it's normal and it's a good sign. However, if you don't deal with it proactively, you will stay stuck and you will not get any movement. The final thing I'll say about this is recognize it in yourself. If you can't tune into yourself as a leader with your anxiety, you will not be able to tune into others. It's called this, you've got mirror neurons in your brain. It's the latest finding. The more you can really be self-aware and know how are these things impacting you personally, then you can actually recognize it in other people. I've heard corporate culture be defined as what you stop noticing after being somewhere for 3 months. It's what you stop noticing after being somewhere for 3 months. Because once you're in the sea and you're swimming in it, you lose sight of what the culture is. You've become a native. So that's going to require you, I think, in terms of the style or the approach, to move away from being, we know best. I'm not saying you did know best, but sometimes it's easy to fall in love with your own solution, to listening, inquiring much more. And I've also got an expression of moving away from thinking about superb engineering to thinking about superb engagement. But open space in a meeting is basically about you throw the agenda away and you let the people in the room decide what the issues are actually going to be. And if you remember, Hans, there was a lot of anxiety. Oh my God, that's a bit risky. If we just give the agenda away to everybody, what will they say? Maybe nobody will have any ideas. I said, trust me, trust. So Hans very bravely led this open space session with his 100 executives. And it was extraordinary, the ideas that actually came out from the group and the trust it built and the openness and the transparency. So masterful change for me represents exactly what your new business model is going to be. When reality hits, that's when leadership is most required. The key thing I've had to learn, which I think is very appropriate for the subject matter, and I found it really hard to do, because I'm quite an achiever in my life. The biggest thing I had to learn was to ask for help. And that was really difficult for me. Maybe it's easy for all of you, but I certainly found it really hard. I'm wondering how many of you so far, last night, maybe this morning, have asked for help of your colleagues versus telling your colleagues what you're doing. Stand up, any of you who think at least 2 of those issues are either current or will be happening. Is there any brave soul who's not standing up, right? Oh, I'm the only one. Oh, there you go. Okay, super. Sit down. My 2 hot buttons. I'm an adopted child. My 2 hot buttons will always be status and relatedness. So my status, am I in or am I out? Was I wanted, was I not wanted? Am I in this family, am I not in this family? I always have issues about that. Am I wanted? Relatedness, can I trust these people? I was given up when I was a baby girl. Will this person stay with me now? I have a real issue about relatedness. So you might be feeling some of these things, and it's nothing to do about RWE right now, but it's stirring up in you a reaction that is your stuff. Don't blame RWE, it might just be stirring something up in you that is your own internal hot button. So recognize what those hot buttons are, and you can then be much more authentic and relaxed and inspiring as a leader.